welcome to the Smartest Moron. You know, I could have just played Nocturne. I could have finished Nocturne and reviewed that like I always wanted to. Instead I keep getting distracted. And guess what? It's more fucking Persona!
Okay, technically this isn't a Persona game, but it might as well be due to so many elements it possesses. And I should mention, I'm only really doing this because it's been a long ass time since I covered something on a Nintendo console. Blame YouTube for that. And it was one of the few games I was hyped for. Only to eventually be disgruntled since I was suffering from major Shin Megami Tensei thirst, and was given another damn Persona game instead. You can easily tell from that line alone that I was suffering from Persona overdosing too. And considering it lacks some of the features that make the Persona games good and interesting, I decided to dub this game Diet Persona. Don't worry, I won't use that name throughout the entire review. Maybe. But that doesn't mean I was going into this with negative thoughts. So what does Tokyo Mirage Session actually keep from SMT? Difficulty. Aside from the Jack Frost stuff and spell names, the game can still be very damn hard and kick your ass if you aren't paying attention. Due to how hitting weaknesses causes a chain reaction of attacks, enemies can likely combo each of your characters to death. And just as you try to revive them, of course things still end up horribly bad, since that party member can't act in the same round just yet, leaving you to be bombarded. It's not impossibly hard, and the game has some spots where I felt grinding was necessary, but I feel it's a lot of fun. There weren't that many times I felt miserable or bored compared to other bad games I played, so if you're into this for just the gameplay, you might have a lot of fun. Plus the animations are fast and expressive, particularly with special attacks showing off the character's personality. Granted, subs would have been effing nice. It's great to see character chemistry in action, regardless of what they're doing. Even if one or two are just bizarre. I'm keeping my eye on you, Barry. God, I wish I wasn't. And there are a good number of alternate costumes you can actually buy with the game's money, as opposed to buying DLC, though that is still a thing for other special costumes. However, one gigantic flaw I have is the visuals, as they just do not work when trying to make things intimidating. Even when the game is clearly trying to be scary or the like, the colors still feel too bright to bring me some dread, and some things just ended up looking silly. I understand that some of the Persona games look too silly at times, but come on. If you are only going to this game for the gameplay though, then I highly recommend this title. If you have a Wii U, that is.
Now if you're looking for the idea of a good story of these elements mixed in together, you're gonna want to look elsewhere. It's not good. It's not god-awful, but it's not good. Honestly, you can find better stuff with the artwork. And I mean by fans and all that stuff of what they wanted, and honestly some of it is pretty good. I just don't want to share it because, well, I don't want to get in any trouble with the artists or anything.
That's not to say the story doesn't have good points. It's just that a lot of it feels like it's on fast forward, as Tsubasa, the friend of the main character, is pushed into doing so much stuff with hardly any real training to the point of it being almost unbelievable. But I'm willing to suspend my disbelief. I do it for frigging Blitzball after all. Then again, if you hate how long Persona games take to start, you might actually call this an improvement. It's just I never really got a good sense of for who these characters were beyond their designated tropes. While some are done decently, like Toma and Tsubasa, at least later on, some are kinda swept under the rug, as are the interactions. For example, Toma and Eleonora seem to hate each other based on their combo skill. However, this is never really seen in the game. Hell, the way Eleonora is introduced is strange as she had nothing to do with the story she was recruited in. It's weird that the characters don't interact more with each other, which sadly brings me to my main issue with the game. The protagonist, Itsuki.
He's also the guy I tried to reference in my review for Persona 5, but he got magically torn out of it somehow. I don't know. Editing software is dumb.
The reason is that the game doesn't have him really do much besides being Ni's supportive best friend. He doesn't even have a backstory beyond just being Tsubasa's best friend. As such, even in the beginning of the game, he fails to stand out in the writing, buried under Tsubasa's plot for a good chunk of the story. And for good reason, as the story is focused on her at first, since she was one of the near victims of an incident where many actors vanished and died. To make a slightly long story short, there's another world filled with mirages that can steal energy called Performa, get it, to grow stronger and sustain themselves. These mirages include the Fire Emblem characters, who are at first corrupted, but thanks to the main protagonist's powers, they kinda become the partners of the main characters, almost acting like a persona, but actually talking and giving them new outfits. It's a bit more similar to what happens in Persona 5. So it's strange that after we identify a few people involved in this mess like Kiria and Yashiro, it's Itsuki who later gains the focus of the plot, despite not doing anything besides buddying up with everybody, with every female party member of course falling in love with him in some way, or just having a crush. You can't even argue that other Persona games did this as well, because those main characters can at least take charge of the situation, or are dealing with the events that directly relate to them. Like the protagonist of Game 3 stopping the train before it went wild and crashed, or the protagonist of 5 having his life go to hell for their actions against Shido, further cementing the theme of the game. The only time I felt the protagonist was really involved in the main plot was towards the end, when Marth's soul fused with him and he suddenly turned Super Saiyan Blue. That is a sentence I actually just said. Although to be fair, it's still less dumb than anything in the third birthday. And mainly because before then, he had gotten shot by the Shadow Dragon and was in actual danger, though oddly enough, it never bothered to shoot the others. No, seriously, it has plenty of time to do that while everyone's crying over Itsuki's apparent death. And the only other time besides that where I felt some kind of emotion was when he believed Tiki was vanishing for good during a side quest, as he seemed genuinely heartbroken. These were the few times I saw him emote beyond his typical protagonist attitudes. You know, the ones like being super dense about flirtations or something sexual, or with how every female character wants to ride him or blush in a few conversations. But aside from those things, I really don't get why he's the main character. And it's not like he's a silent protagonist or anything, he can speak. Tsubasa felt like the main character thanks to her story, her introduction, and the fact that she actually makes progress. Itsuki does not feel like he's progressing that much. The finale is also kinda ruined too when he is the only one to say goodbye to all the Fire Emblem characters, and praised because he was the hero. This is kinda bullcrap considering it wasn't just him alone. This was a team effort, but we gotta make it all about Itsuki anyway. And he's kinda worse in terms of gameplay too. Unlike other Shin Megami Tensei heroes before him, who could actually customize their ideal loadout so they aren't a liability, Itsuki is stuck with certain elemental skills. So when he's in a situation you don't want him to be in, he is not fun to use, especially when you can't even switch him out for someone else. Plus he lacks a lot of ad-lib moves, which are basically random superpowered moves. If the game had made a point to show him actually try and find work in Fortuna beyond some roles he had to do because, well, he had to do it, I might have actually liked his ascension as the leader. But he's just made the leader because he's a nice guy and clearly the only one capable of listening. I can take this character out. Replace him with Tsubasa, who was pushed so much into the spotlight, you would swear she is Roman Reigns.
On that note, seriously, don't kill me, Roman Reigns.
And I don't think I would lose much, and Super Saiyan Blue Marth would just likely have tits. The only reason she isn't is because any sense of being a reliable individual is put onto Itsuki, forcing her to rely on others all the damn time. Come to think of it, I can't really think of anything she does that doesn't involve support from him either, or support from anyone else from that matter. Also, he has the worst costume lineup out of everyone, lacking a lot of the cool or interesting designs everyone else can get. I'd say he was as bland as Jaden from Power Rangers Samurai, but at least Jaden has importance to his character. It's not good, he could be a massive fucking idiot, he ruins the story for his sister, but at least he felt important. Hell, Toma would have made for a more interesting protagonist. On top of already having a job, he wants to be a hero, inspired by the Sentai stuff so much that he wants to become like them, poses and everything. He's the only other character who fails in this side quest and in the industry. Or as far as I know, since my disc won't let me complete Yashiro's crap, so when he actually succeeds, it feels like genuine progress is being made. Towards the end, he even sacrifices his shot for an audition for a lead role without a second thought to save a kid he felt he could relate to and was trying to make happy. He was still able to make it to the audition, yes, but that doesn't change the fact that he was willing to lose it. Part of what makes a hero is sacrificing personal interests to help others. And that's not to discount Tsubasa either. While yes, she is pushed incredibly fast into various and too many roles, at least we actually see her train her ass off and receive help from others. Itsuki is technically training with her as well, but he has no real goal or objective. Again, if you were making that a point for his character, that could have been relatable in some way. Maybe feeling inferior due to his lack of learning compared to Tsubasa. Sadly, that's not what happened, and you can easily see why many Fire Emblem fans refer to him as the worst lord in Fire Emblem history. And yes, that's counting Corrin and what's his face from the Warriors game. I can never remember it. I would have at least been happy if he only had a manager position, given how he helps people. Maybe make him Paul Heyman. Okay, no, I don't feel comfortable with this. Okay, now I feel comfortable with this.
Brock Lesnar.
Please don't kill me, Brock Lesnar. And I know, unlike Roman Reigns, you'll actually fucking do it.
The theme and story is also... I really don't know what it is exactly. Is it that performance and music can motivate people? I mean, if it is, that's another reason why I like Tsubasa and Toma the most, and a bit of Kirio with her ability to dive into other genres, and yet we get stuff like Itsuki suddenly being thrust into the spotlight, or how certain bits of character are taken out entirely, like other character interactions. Or in the case of Eleonora, who seems to have a problem with not finding a place where she belongs, we never see any kind of conflict that thrusts that problem out in the open. Is it that we can do great things together? It's kinda ruined by overpraising Itsuki and making it all about him. I know it sounds like I'm giving this game such a hard time that I kinda think it's shit, but it isn't. Again, I'm not saying the game is bad. I can still get personalities even if some are tropey, like Sasuke here, I mean Yashiro. I just wish more was done with this. If they had received the same kind of care even Toma got, I could have called this a fairly good cast. Sadly, I just think it's slightly above average. If you took out the side stories entirely, it would be painfully average. Though then again, considering some of the crap I played, that might be a huge compliment. You can complain that the localization ruined this for me, or that I just don't get Japan, but that's not a good excuse. For example, Persona 5, from what I'm told, relies on knowing a lot of Japanese culture to believe that horrible people like Kamoshida exist, and that the public does nothing. Except I can relate to the themes of the story despite not living in Japan. I gave reasons why I could relate to the story, and why it invested me. Plus, in stories you could probably find themes not even intended by the author. That can sometimes happen.
But of all those elements, the Fire Emblem cast is probably given the worst damage in this game.
For starters, you do not find out a damn thing about why those characters are suddenly Persona ripoffs until the middle of Chapter 5 at best. Then as you do the trials, you wonder why the Awakening characters are part of this game, considering this and the original Fire Emblem have a huge time gap between them. About 2,000 years, I'm told. That too is never explained. They are just there to fill out the roster. But most importantly, they don't really connect well with their masters, at least in the main story. Occasionally you might get an entertaining conversation with those like Tharja or even Draug with how they talk to their partners, but I can't really get a good grasp on any of them. Barring Tiki, who... yeah, I can't hate her. Damn cuteness and sad stories. Marth is perhaps one of the worst examples, serving as mainly a power-up to save the protagonist and kinda pushing Chrom off to the side. Then again, he barely did anything really noteworthy as well. And he was the main character of Awakening. Kinda sorta. The new designs are also a mixed bag. In some cases like Gangrel, I frigging love his design and moveset, fitting the character and adding some new stuff that's fun to see. Garneth, though? Oh no. I don't think there's a worse design for one of the biggest bads of the Fire Emblem series. It's just... I know Persona is capable of using weird as hell designs, especially towards the end of the game, but that doesn't mean I still have to like this. This kinda reminds me how SMT4 changed Lucifer and the Angel designs when it really didn't need to, making them just... I still don't know what the hell these are. Odin's a great improvement though. Friggin' badass. Also, sadly, much like other Fire Emblem games, the villain is not interesting. I mean, the Shadow Dragon looks neat for what it is, but I mean, outside of Garneth's ridiculous design, there's actually kind of a traitor in a way. I am not really sure how to label this, but he's only helping Garneth so he could see the performance of a lifetime. Basically, you know, good guys fighting bad guys, blah blah blah. But that's it. That's all to his character, and he ends up sacrificing his life so Garneth can succeed in summoning the Shadow Dragon. As such, it makes this villain feel otherwise completely worthless. You can write him out of the plot, and chances are you wouldn't really lose that much. And the most important thing it manages to screw up is not helping introduce a player to the Fire Emblem series. Even if you focus on the original characters, Fire Emblem is pushing itself just enough into the spotlight that it is important to focus on. Basically becoming a crossover in a way. A good crossover should make you feel interested in checking out those other series. It's why I love Namco x Capcom, as I found myself looking at many of the different series. I even got into Mega Man Legends that way too. I wouldn't really know of anything in this game that could make someone check out the Fire Emblem series. And if it sounds like you're not going to like this game, I recommend Stella Glow for the 3DS. If you want a good alternative for a musical RPG, this is the game to get. Hell, it feels more like a Shin Megami Tensei game than this one. Trust me, stick with the story, you'll find out exactly what I mean.
I'm the smartest moron, and just For the love of God, pick up Stella Glow. You can find it for cheap or digitally, and while it is a bit expensive online, it's frigging worth it. Not to mention, let's face it, you likely kept your 3DS over the Wii U. And no one would blame you.